Well, good morning, everybody. I'm going to go live here on Facebook, and what I thought I would do is take a few minutes and share with you sort of why I do what I do. And so what do I do? Well, I'm a lawyer at Legacy Planning Law Group. That is my law firm. We do estate planning, we do elder law, and we do probate and estate and trust administration. So what the heck is all of that, and why do I do that? Well, I would take you back in time. I'm not going to tell you how far back, because it's further than I like to admit. But to the start of my legal career as a young pup lawyer. I did not always do this estate planning and elder law and probate. In fact, I started off my career as a litigator, as what's called a commercial litigator. So what is that? Well, that litigation involves lawsuits, and a commercial litigator deals with sort of business type lawsuits, lawsuits between companies and dealing with business transactions, contracts that may have been breached. That sort of thing, as opposed to dealing with personal injury cases or divorce cases or criminal cases. I didn't do any of that. So I started off as a litigator, started off as sort of a fighter, if you will. But what, that was nice at the start and nice in the early years. Some of it was very exciting, traveling across the country, doing depositions and other things. But after a while, as the kids were getting older and I started to sort of reflect on larger life issues, I said to myself, well, gee, what the heck am I giving back to society? What am I contributing? I guess as we get older, sort of the lens of life sort of widens and we see more peripherally rather than sort of locked in on our day-to-day. And I said to myself, well, being a litigator really isn't contributing a whole lot, because you may have worked on a lawsuit case for 2 years, 3 years, and done a lot of activity. And the way I like to describe it is you basically come to the big conference room table with a bunch of paper, and you just basically shuffle them. And that one day, the case magically goes away. It is settled. So what the heck did I contribute? So sort of mid-career, I decided to make a transition. Rather than sort of create problems, I wanted to help solve problems. Rather than break Humpty Dumpty apart, I said, why don't I go ahead and try to put Humpty Dumpty together for people? Why don't I help people address their concerns and the sort of the issues they're dealing with, focused on sort of long-term planning. And so again, it's a chance to help people sort of solve their concerns and allay their concerns. So again, it's that estate planning, things like wills, trusts, and estates. Elder law, what is that? Well, we help people protect their assets primarily if they ever need long-term care, or maybe mom or dad or husband or wife need long-term care right now, and so we help them protect the family treasure from the often very devastating cost of long-term care. And then for families whose loved one maybe did not plan as well as they could, what we do is we help them navigate the court system through probate, and if there was a trust involved, help them administer that trust. So really, more on the planning side. Sometimes I'm asked, well, what do you do as a planner? What do you do as a planner? Well, really, you can boil it down to helping people solve critical mistakes. And so what might some critical mistakes be that people make all the time, that I see all the time? Well, maybe not making things as smooth and easy for your family after you pass away. Maybe, in fact, not planning well and bogging them down in that court system. Well, perhaps another mistake is not protecting the kids' inheritance. Well, from who? Well, maybe protecting it from themselves, or perhaps protecting the inheritance, even if they're otherwise responsible, protecting that inheritance from two of the biggest threats to any child's inheritance over the course of their lifetime: getting a divorce and getting hit with a lawsuit. Divorce and lawsuit. So that could be a critical mistake, not planning to protect that child's inheritance. And then lastly, not making sure things are in place to make sure that somebody can make important decisions for you if you can't. As I've reflected on this topic, why do I do what why do I do what I do? It sort of caused me to think about some people I've come across, sort of stories, if you will, things not to do. So, for example, I'm reminded of the story of Doreen, who passed away without a will, and had 2 children. So what ended up happening is her kids were stuck in the court system. Her kids were stuck in the court system, and it ended up costing them $41,000 when it came down to having to pay the attorney and other fees and costs, etc. And oh, by the way, as a byproduct of that, Doreen's kids, who were very close, ended up having a falling out, and they stopped talking to each other. And really, it's kind of hard to put a price tag on that. So, I guess in a sense, I try to help people avoid the story of Doreen. Reminded of the story of Hank and Connie. Hank and Connie were married for a long time, and Hank was a simple guy. He liked things simple, so they just had very simple wills in place, what we call I love you wills. Gee, honey, when I die, everything goes to you, and vice versa. When you die, everything goes to me. And it certainly met Hank's sort of simplicity test, and everything worked just fine when Hank died, but not so fine when then Connie later died. And really, when a couple has those simple I love you wills, all that is basically doing is kicking the can down the road. And so guess what the cost of that critical mistake was? $18,000 in court and lawyer fees, having to go through the probate process. I'm then reminded of the story of Fred and Christina. Well, they were in a second marriage, and each had children from a prior marriage. And so they came into the marriage, and again, they particularly Fred, liked things simple too, similar to Hank in the previous scenario. Like things simple. So they just had sort of simple I love you wills. But they each had, again, children from their prior marriage. So they both sort of reached an agreement. Hey, look, we found love later in life. We want to make sure that the surviving spouse is taken care of. But at the second spouse's death, we want to make sure that the assets I'm bringing into this marriage are going to be going back to my kids from the prior marriage. And both were fine with that. And so they reached that agreement over the kitchen table, over basically a handshake and a hug. They didn't write it down. And so what happened is that Fred passed away. So under the simple I love you wills that they had, everything that Fred had went to Christina, not to his kids from his prior marriage. Well, then Christina, over a period of time, was sort of convinced by her children from her prior marriage to change up her will and give everything to them, including Fred's money. Well, guess how much was in Fred's accounts when he passed away? $476,000. So I'm reminded that was really the cost of Fred's mistake. That's money that he was earmarking for his kids from his first marriage. They both agreed upon it, but she changed up the plan. So there was a much better way they could have gone about that. So that's another sort of reason why I do what I do. I'm reminded of the story of Bob, who was a widow and had 2 adult children, and one child was doing fine, married well, didn't really need much. The other child, his son, was really falling on hard times, had been unemployed twice, in the previous 3 or 4 years, and also his son had 2 children. Well, Bob wanted to make sure to take care of his son and his grandkids after he passed away, because his grandkids were coming, were going into college, needed to pay tuition. And so, and he wanted everything to go quickly to them as well, because his son was unemployed, needed money, and the kids were entering college. So he thought he had solved that concern of his, that things go quickly and smoothly, and he went ahead and set up a will, put together a last will and testament. Well, he then got healthcare diagnosis shortly thereafter and died. Well, his son then discovered that his father's wish that everything goes smoothly and easily was not going to be met. It was going to go difficult and hard. It got stuck in the probate court system, and so $26,000 later, eventually, Bob's son got his share of the money. Could have used it much sooner. He was on unemployment. And by the way, the grandkids could have used the money a lot sooner too, because they had tuition bills due, so they had to go out and borrow some money. So again, that was sort of the cost of Bob's mistake, $26,000. And Bob's son then discovered, when talking to the probate lawyer, gee, there was such a much better way that Bob could have used to avoid that whole situation being stuck in the court system with that delay and that expense. And then, finally, I'm reminded of the story of Phyllis. Phyllis had 2 adult children. She had a son and a daughter. They each had some issues as they were approaching middle age. One, the son, he was an alcoholic, liked to drink, and the daughter was in a troubled marriage. So Phyllis very much wanted to make sure that any inheritance that each of them received would stay with them, sort of stay in the family bloodline, but she didn't do any planning to put that in place. So she just, had a last will and testament, and after she ended up dying, well, what happened? Well, the daughter got divorced. Half of that ended up going to the ex-spouse. And then guess what the son did? He had a couple of DUIs, so he got I think it was his 3rd DUI then, and it was a bad one, and he killed somebody. And so the lawsuit came, and all of the inheritance ended up going to the lawsuit. And so without getting into the specific numbers of who got what, the bottom line is, at the end of the day, $516,000 of family treasure that Phyllis very much wanted her kids to have ended up leaking out the side door. Some to the ex-spouse when the daughter got divorced, and all of the son's inheritance got lost to the lawsuit. So that's sort of a summary of what I do. Again, I try to help people, solve problems rather than create problems. And so I just wanted to share this with everybody, and hopefully you've got a little bit more insight sort of in what we do and why we do it, and no, we're not scary people. Lawyers are not scary people, particularly those that are the planners that like to help people. It might be okay to be scared of a litigator, because litigators are a different breed, but as I said, sort of mid-career, I decided that's really not what I want to do. I don't want to be fighting anymore, and I like to tell people I discovered that I'm more of a lover than a fighter. So with that, I want to thank everybody for watching this and wish everybody a great rest of the day. Bye there.